Ravens football with the Terrapins taking on the Golden Gophers Saturday at noon at Bird Stadium. And, of course, on Sunday, we are running the bus trip up to the Meadowlands, to the swamps of Jersey, where the New York Football Giants are waiting to take a purple beating from the Ravens. I don't know. The Ravens are changing offensive coordinators. It's been a wacky week around here after a wacky previous week with Zach Britton and Buck Showalter and Ubaldo Jimenez. But they are having fun in the nation's capital, at least for a little while longer, at least until Thursday night when the Nats and the Dodgers do what the other three series have not done, which is provide a Game 5. Gene Wong covers all things sports at The Washington Post. You can follow his journey out on Twitter as well as at thewashingtonpost.com. His Twitter is Gene_WANG. Looks like Wang, sounds like Wong. That's pretty much correct, right, Gene?
Yeah, you're spot on there. Absolutely. That'll do the trick.
Well, the sports life is busy here in Baltimore, right? We had our genius manager pull some not-so-genius maneuverings in the final hours of the season, and we'll live with that the next 6 months. And, of course, the football team marches on. But in D.C., there's just all sorts of juicy things happening, including this Game 5. I'm wearing my Dodger cap. I'm anti-national, but at some point the Nationals are going to win a big game, right? I mean, at some point.
Well, you know what? I guess the percentages probably dictate that may happen, but with the way DC sports has been with the franchises, the professional sports franchises here, there's no sure thing. I mean, there's certainly lots of trepidation going into Thursday's Game 5. They've collapsed before 2012, 2014, so it's very recent. The sting is still very fresh in the memory of a lot of Nationals fans. It's almost like the Capitals situation where this team does great in the regular season and you're almost waiting for something bad to happen in the postseason. But they can take the first step in exercising some of those demons if they can win Game 5.
For these Cubs fans, and, I'm getting to be an old guy, Gene. I turned 48 this week. So, I remember when the Red Sox were losers. I remember when Cleveland didn't have parades. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember when the Orioles did, so, I mean, I'm old. But this Capitals thing, for me, as a fan and as a dude that was, in the Capitol Center back in the 80s and Rod Langway, and I go back to all of that and being sort of a real sort of insider now with Barry Trotz coaching the team and his friendship of mine for a quarter of a century going back to my Skipjacks days. The fact that the Capitals are widely and freely associated with choking, it really, as a fan, right? I mean, I remember when the Rangers had never won and they were the choke franchise. Anytime you talk to anybody in Toronto, they look at the Maple Leafs as the ultimate failures of their lifetime. But the Caps are really getting up on that right now, aren't they, bro?
Well, they are, but if you talk to Ted Leonsis, he'll tell you that in order to fail at that level, you have to get to that level. Now, I know it's a small consolation to suffering Caps fans. I grew up in the D.C. area. I'm 1 year younger than you are, so I know all the history of Washington sports. I remember Cap Center those days too, when the Caps were winning 10 games a year, a dozen games a year. It was really, really bad.
I love the things the love letters we sent to Ron Hextall and Larry Murphy.
That's it.
I mean, we think the Mexican fans are bad. I mean, really, right? I mean, really.
Certainly. Look, the Capitals. The regular season is. They won't say this, but the fact is it's really meaningless because they're going to make the playoffs. It's a question of how far they advance when they get there. I mean, that's just a story year after year. It's a narrative that people are probably sick of, but it's a fact until they actually get to a conference finals or, God forbid, the Stanley Cup. Then you can kind of just stop discussing that and saying, are they going to win a Stanley Cup? But right now, it's just year after year of the same thing, and that's the script until they decide to change it or until they do change it.
Well, and then there's, the Nationals and the Cubs. If that were to be what it is, someone would have to win.
No, that is very true, although the Cubs' long-suffering history is probably a bit longer given that the Nationals have only been in D.C. The franchise has been around longer, obviously, since in Montreal, but it's only been in D.C. for, a dozen years or so. So, yeah, they've suffered recently, but the decade-long suffering definitely belongs to the Cubs. And I think there may be more sympathies in that direction.
From where I sit, Gene, I'll be honest with you. If I'm wondering whether Mr. Angelos is rooting for the Nationals to win because that would make him more money, probably, or whether well, not probably, definitely. I mean, it definitely would make him more money if they won the World Series. But he would so hate if they won the World Series. He's such a conflicted, old, miserable, old, wealthy man, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think that it's interesting, though, that I remember when the Redskins played the Ravens not that long ago, there was all this talk about, is it a rivalry? Do the teams not like each other? Do the cities not like each other? I think the feeling is, at least from my perspective, it's like people just shrug their shoulders. It's not really like a head-to-head rivalry. There's not that's just the feeling I get because, teams like the Capitals, the Nationals, and the Redskins have rivalries with teams in their divisions, teams that they play all the time. So it's not so much geographic as it is a case of regularity. Like the Redskins see the Eagles, they hate them. The Cowboys, obviously, historically. The Nationals have the teams like the Phillies, obviously, that they don't get along with, and the Caps traditionally have got like the Flyers, the Rangers, the Pittsburgh, who the Caps opening against this season. So, yeah, I mean, I think the rivalry thing is probably a bit blown out of proportion. Now, as far as Angelo's season, I can't get in that man's head, so I'm not going to speak for him.
Yeah, let's get on to some good stuff. We got a lot of things happening. Obviously, the Terps got off to a great start, and they went up to Penn State and stumbled. But Navy has been as good a story, and what they pulled off last weekend. I know, I had Todd Helmick on, one of our college football analysts from National Champs here earlier this week. Just, it might be the biggest upset of the whole college football season when it's all over with, right?
Well, there's no doubt about it, but here's the thing about Navy, that they do this stuff all the time, and that's not really a hyperbole. I mean, since Kenny Amatulilo took over in Annapolis, all this team does is give top 10 teams, ranked teams, I should say, all they can handle, and no team wants to play Navy. I mean, remember when Urban Meyer at Ohio State, they were playing Navy. He said, this is one of the last teams I want to play. Same with Brian Kelly every year, Notre Dame, because they are so hard to prepare for with that triple option offense. You don't see it but maybe once a year, twice a year, and you have to kind of change your entire thinking of how you play offense and defense against this team. So that's why they can lose to Air Force, we're talking about Navy here, and then come back and beat Houston. Last year they beat Memphis in Memphis. Memphis looked unstoppable at the time Navy went down there and beat them. So they're used to this kind of thing where, they're kind of under the radar and then they win a game like this. But if you talk to the coaching staff and players, this is what they expect every week because of that offense and how complicated it is to stop.
Gene, I know Lee Corso's on ESPN, but I didn't know he had ESP.
Well, you know what? He was a former Navy coach, so he has a soft spot for the midshipmen and for Annapolis. And he knows the same thing that people who cover the Navy football for years know, that since Paul Johnson came in and installed the triple option in the early 2000s, that this team can rack up a lot of yards. They ran for 306 yards against Houston. This was the number one defensive rushing team in the entire country coming in the game. They had allowed 42 yards per game. Unbelievable. And Navy rolls up 306. I mean, just think about that for a second. I mean, and this is a team that beat Oklahoma in the opening week of the season. So that just shows you what Navy is capable of doing, on a short, especially if you're not used to seeing the triple option.
He is Gene Wong. He covers all things sports at the Washington Post. I figured at some point I had to reach out to somebody from Washington, and if you and I had made a bet or something, I would owe you crab cakes or something stupid like that. But I don't make those wagers, and I certainly would never wear a Darryl Green or a Joe Theismann jersey or anything, as far as losing a bet. But I will say this. I'm old school Baltimore. I hate y'all when it comes to football, and the whole notion that we have to wait 4 years. Dude, you know how bad things are up here. Every time we lose to the Redskins, we fire our offensive coordinator before 10 a.m. It's kind of like when they hire a pope. There's like a smoke screen that comes out afterward,
Well, usually it's the Redskins firing their coach, right? But you know what? The Ravens have Super Bowls in their history, recent history, let me say. The Redskins have none of that. They're just trying to, make the playoffs and maybe see what happens there. So I think the thought process of the franchises are a bit different at this stage of their lives.
I would say, how you feeling about the Skins? That's a tough division, and I tell you what, this whole Dak Prescott thing, if he's real, and people who know a lot more about football than me tell me that from what they're seeing, he could be real. And I've seen this with Kurt Warner and Tom Brady and these sort of geniuses that blossom at different levels and get overlooked in their gym shorts out in Indianapolis where I freeze my ass off every March, But I would say in Carson Wentz, he was not overlooked. And I saw that kid take the podium in Indianapolis, and I thought he did smell and look a little bit like a Joe Flacco kind of guy that was going to – it didn't look too big for him. And then he goes to the meanest place in the universe, right, Philadelphia, and starts winning right away. And I think the Redskins and the Giants are going to have their hands full because it looks like if the Eagles and the Cowboys have real quarterbacks for a little while, they're going to be good.
Yeah, well, I was not too sure about the Skins after the first two games, but they've been on a roll lately. Kirk Cousins is starting to look more like the player we saw last year. He's much more decisive in his throws, much more decisive in his reads. And, as long as this team stays healthy on offense, I will say that they could be a handful because now that Jamison Crowder is coming into his own, we know what he can do in special teams. This guy's been the best kick returner in the league this season. He had the 85-yard touchdown, as you know, so on a punt return. But, Deshaun Jackson, such a difficult cover. You have to account for him. One play to him can change the entire complexion of the game. Jordan Reed, arguably the best tight end in football. Pierre Garçon, the crafty veteran. If Matt Jones gets going, he's had a one game of 100 yards this season. If he can get going, that offense is pretty formidable. It just comes down to how many stops the defense can get. Same thing in Dallas. I mean, their strategy is kind of unusual. They have their offense on the field because they don't want their defense on the field because their defense is susceptible to big plays. So far, it's worked because Dak Prescott, as you mentioned, has been great. Ezekiel Elliott well on his way to winning Rookie of the Year behind that great offensive line. And this is even without Des Bryant playing a bunch of games. So, they've had some younger receivers kind of develop. So, yeah, the greatest thing for a young quarterback is an offensive line and a running game, and the Cowboys certainly have that. So Prescott has not been forced to win games. But at the same time, he's made great decisions. We'll see what happens when he gets another look at the league in the second half of the season. There's more game film on him. But, yeah, it's so far so good. That division, which came into the season not looking so good, now is looking pretty good with the Eagles also, as you mentioned, and Carson Wentz playing great football.
Gene, it's busy around here, man. Cap's getting going. The Wizards dribbling now. We got college basketball coming down the pipeline as well, and football season is here. We'll wait 4 more years to get our shot to, come down to Ral John and do the good deed. 2020, man. I'll like be in my 50s by then. My God.
Yeah. Well, yeah, likewise. But you know what? This is the best time of the year for sports. As you mentioned, everything is happening. I was just at Big East Basketball Media Day. ACC Basketball Media Day is happening. I mean, it's just, there's so many great sports that are here or about to be here. So, yeah, I can't. This is like Christmas for a sports fan.
Yeah, all that and Adele in town, too. It's been a hell of a week, Gene.
That's right.
Appreciate you, my brother. We'll be following you out on Twitter. I love having you on. Thanks, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime.
Gene Wong joining us here. He is out at Post Sports on Twitter as well as on his personal Twitter. That's Gene_WANG. Looks like Wang, sounds like Wong. Gene Wong, Washington Post joining us here and WashingtonPost.com. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in shape, and there's one right around the corner from you. Looking for a little fall inspiration? Go to PlanetOfTriumphs.com. Pretty cool website full of great stories to get you motivated to get yourself in shape for the holidays, or in my case, for my Australia trip in February. I'm not calorie counting around here, and certainly I won't be on Thursday night at Greenmount Station, where I'm going to have a fried crab cake because they taste better. We're going to welcome Alex Lewis from the offensive line and Zach Orr, a linebacker from the Ravens, out to Greenmount Station. We're going to be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, and for There Goes My Hero as well. Not morning newspaper, our text service was delivered on Monday morning at 9:33 when Mark Trestman was fired. If you were on it, you got the news first. That's the way the WNST text service rolls. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me anytime, anywhere. I am a very available individual. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.